I'm Callum Chase, author of Surviving AI, co-host of the London Futurist podcast, and a speaker on AI. Right now, in Panama, at a conference organized by Ben Goertzel, which is bringing together a couple of hundred really interesting people, and it's promising to be, and has already become, a fascinating 4 days. So the technological singularity is an idea that was generated by a man called Werner Vinge and then taken up most famously by Ray Kurzweil. And it refers to the time when computers, machines, become smarter than humans, and suddenly everything changes about the nature of being human because we're no longer the smartest entity on the planet. And I thought that was a fascinating idea when I first came across it in 1999. And it occurred to me that there would be an event that would happen which would be almost as important, not as important, but almost as important sometime before, which I called the economic singularity. And that was when the time comes when machines aren't smarter than us in every way, but they're smarter than us in every way that we make money. And for any job that a human used to do, there'd be a machine available which would be able to do it cheaper, better, and faster. And at that point, there wouldn't be jobs for humans. There'd still be lots of work for us to do. There'd still be lots of interesting projects for us to do. But we wouldn't be able to get paid for any of it because there'd be a machine that could do whatever we could do for money, cheaper, better, and faster. So I started talking about the two singularities then. So if and when the economic singularity happens, and there are no jobs for humans, that raises some really interesting challenges. People think that the biggest challenge will be how we find meaning in a life without jobs. I don't think that's the big problem. I think there are at least three categories of people that show that you do not need a job to have meaning in your life. In Europe, we used to have, and to some degree still have, aristocrats. Most of them have never had jobs, and they don't have miserable lives. There's no tidal wave of existential angst among aristocrats. They actually have very nice lives. Another category is well-off retired people, and because of the age I am, I know quite a lot of those sorts of people. And again, they're very happy and they don't want another job. They're very busy arranging their bridge nights and their dinner parties and their art festivals and so on. And then the third category, we all know, people who don't have jobs and have very meaningful lives, is children. You show me a child who thinks they need a job to have a meaningful time, and that's not a child. So meaning, I don't think, is the problem. I think we will find lots of interesting things to do. The problem is money, or rather resources. In a world where there are no jobs for humans, how do we all have enough resources for a great life? And some people think that universal basic income is the solution to this. I think universal basic income is one of the most overrated ideas I've ever heard. Prior to the economic singularity, when there are still jobs for humans, John Kay, an economist, put it very well. He said that if it's high enough, if it's pegged at a high enough level, if the income is high enough to be really helpful, then it's not affordable for the economy. And if it's affordable for the economy, then it's not high enough to make a real huge difference for the individuals. After the economic singularity, the problem with UBI is slightly different. It's that it just isn't enough. And the little word in the middle gives it away, basic. We have to do much better in a world after jobs than just give everybody a sort of subsistence income. We need to create a really good, luxurious lifestyle for everybody. And so that's really the biggest challenge. And I think the answer to it is rooted in the idea of abundance. We have to make the prices of all the goods and services you need for a really good standard of living, say a middle-class American standard of living for everybody around the world. We have to make that virtually free, not completely free because you don't want to lose the power of the market, but very, very affordable. I think that in addressing that challenge, we will solve poverty. I think a world in which machines do all the jobs is a world of enormous wealth, and it becomes a question of distribution. It becomes a question of how you get those resources to enough people. And as I say, if we create an economy of sufficient abundance, then distribution becomes less of a problem because there's just tons and tons of wealth to go around. Well, today, AI is a very powerful tool that we all use. Ever since the first big bang in AI in 2012, when deep learning arrived, the big tech companies have filled our smartphones with really wonderful AI services. I'm old enough to think that having a map on your phone which tells you exactly how to get from A to B in a city or in a country, and tells you how long it's going to take you, and then tells you, oh, there's a traffic accident here, you need to go around there. I think it's a miracle. I still think it's a miracle. I think AI translation, whereby you have real-time translation and you can speak into your phone and somebody who speaks a different language can hear their version of what you said in their language instantaneously. I think that's a miracle. So we have those, and then now we have generative AI, thanks to the second big bang in AI, which happened in 2017. And we suddenly have this legion of like AIs which are like freshly minted graduates. They can write a report, or they can write a synopsis of a book, and it'll have mistakes in it, like a fresh graduate's version would have mistakes. And they can do it in 3 seconds flat. That's another miracle. So we have these miracles, and they have some downsides. They are biased because they inherit our biases. They're impinging on our privacy. They are arguably, I don't think this is true, but some people are worried that they're reducing our autonomy by making us lose some skills. I don't actually think that's true, but it's something people worry about. But in the future, there are very serious risks. And of course, the biggest one is how we survive the arrival of superintelligence. When we become the second smartest species on the planet, that's quite a vulnerable position for us to be in. So I think there are mostly positive impacts of AI now, and there are very important risks that we have to think about that are coming in the future. That depends on whether it restricts access. And it's interesting to compare the impacts of the two big bangs in AI. I mentioned that there was one in 2012, and that enabled the arrival of deep learning systems, which are the things that you use on your smartphone at the moment. Those systems require huge compute power, massive amounts of data, and critically, very highly skilled AI practitioners to wrangle the algorithms. And it's really hard to build a system or deploy a system like that. And so, yeah, ownership of those matters. And at the moment, it is pretty much entirely the big tech companies who have them. The AI that has been created by the second big bang in 2017, transformer technologies, GPTs, they are trained by big tech companies, but once they're trained, we can all use them. I'm not an AI, I'm a non-technical person. I'm not a programmer. I've never run a company using AI, but I can take a GPT-4 and I can write books with it. I can produce a summary of a consultant report. I can produce a consultant report, which then needs to be edited a lot. So they're actually already very democratized. And so the ownership of those models is much more, the access to them, which is what really counts, is much more widely available. That's a really big change. In the future, when we get to really close to artificial general intelligence, which is human-level AI, and superintelligence, which is beyond human-level AI, if we had those models owned by a small set of people, that could be risky. But I don't think that's very likely, because there's so much money going into the sector, and there's so many people working on them. There's going to be a whole plethora of models. So I don't think that there's likely to be a monopoly. So I don't think that's one of our big things to worry about. There's kind of two different buckets of risk from AI. There's the short-term buckets, which are things like privacy, bias, transparency, possibly algocracy, where we kind of we delegate so much of our decision power to AIs that we almost forget how to make them. Those risks are serious and important, but they're not as serious as important as the longer-term risks, which generally fall under the heading or often get called AI safety. And that's about how to ensure, if it's possible, that a superintelligence is safe for us to be around. There's an unfortunate tendency for some people to say, well, this set of risks is important and that set of risks is unimportant. There's even a stream of a school of thought that says the short-term risks are real, the longer-term risks they're just a fiction made up by big tech companies who are trying to distract attention from the short-term risks. I think that's a crazy proposition. I mean, if you're going to create a diversion, you wouldn't say, hey, I've got this thing I'm building which might destroy the human race. That's not a very good diversion. Both sets of risks are important. To me, the really important ones to think about are the ones that carry existential risks, and that's superintelligence. Well, if you had that choice, as a human, I'd prefer to be in control of it. Although it has to be said that, humanity's record of making the right decisions when it's in control of things is not perfect. But still, you'd probably prefer to be in control of it than just having it happen at random. I actually don't think we're going to be in control of it. We don't understand how the latest types of AI work. Transformer models, they allocate numbers to tokens, which are parts of words or pixels, and those numbers are very big. And then they construct models which are relationships between all those tokens, between what they call the vectors, those numbers, in multiple dimensions. I mean, thousands of dimensions. And we humans are limited to 3 dimensions, 4 if you include time. We don't understand how these things work. I personally think it's probably always going to be the case that we don't understand how they work, and that's already. And obviously they're going to get a lot more powerful and a lot faster, and there's probably going to be some new paradigms of AI before we get to superintelligence. There's going to be some new types of AI which will be even more beyond our understanding. So I don't think we're going to be in control. I don't think we're going to decide how they evolve. I think the technology will evolve the way it can, and it will evolve at the speed that it can. And to some degree, we're just along for the ride. So this is a really interesting decision, although it's probably not a decision we can actually take, but a really interesting decision for humans to think about. We are in the process of creating a technology which might make us go extinct, and quite possibly in not a very nice way. And we don't know what the chances of that happening are. If you say to ordinary people, what do you think about us doing this? What do you think about this project of creating this potentially totally destructive technology? Most people will go, what on earth are you talking about? Stop, don't do that. Stop right now. And that actually is a pretty rational recommendation. Obviously, it carries downsides because the upside potential of very advanced AI is enormous. Very advanced AI should be able to solve all our problems: war, poverty, death, you name it. But nevertheless, if you're doing something which is a gamble, and there's a distinct possibility which you can't quantify that the downside can happen and its extinction, then the logical thing to do is stop. Now, could we stop? Well, yes, we could. If public opinion woke up and said, this is awful, stop it, around the world, say Oprah Winfrey goes on and says, hey, superintelligence is real, what these people in Silicon Valley is doing is real, and it could wipe us all out. You could imagine an enormous upswelling of public opinion which demand that it be stopped. And I think in America, in Europe, in China, certainly in China, they do not like uncontrolled minds. In most of the world, you could get an effective moratorium on the development of advanced AI. But there are people who would break the moratorium. Vladimir Putin would for sure break it. And the North Koreans for sure would break it. There are mafia organizations who would break it. There are rogue billionaires who would break it. And at the moment, none of those people have the resources or the access to the skills that they could build superintelligence. But one thing we know is that compute power is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Moore's law isn't dead, it's not dying. And in 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 5, those bad actors will have the ability to create superintelligence. And a world where superintelligence arrives in the hand of bad actors is not a good thing. So actually, I think we can't stop, even if there was a massive upswell of public opinion demanding it. I don't think we can stop. My guess is that in 10 years we'll We'll, we'll be at or reaching the economic singularity, but not at superintelligence. That's my guess, but my confidence interval for that is pretty low. There are people who are much closer to it and smarter than me and better informed than me who think it's going to be all much sooner than that. Sam Altman seems to think we're going to get AGI in 2 or 3 years. I know Ben thinks it could happen in 2 or 3 years, and it's almost bound to happen before 10 years. And Ray Kurzweil has been making the prediction that we'll have human-level AI in 2029. He's been saying that since the 80s. And maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. So like I say, my guess is that that's a little optimistic, but it could happen by then. Right now, I think the best choice that we can all make is to go up the learning curve about AI, both for ourselves individually and as a civic duty to society. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true, that an AI isn't going to take your job anytime soon, but a human using AI might very well take your job soon. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be unemployable for quite a while because you'll be able to get another job, but it's always destabilizing to have to change jobs. So for our own selfish purposes, I think we should all go up the learning curve about AI, but also collectively, as societies, we need to understand AI, where it's come from, what it can do and where it's going, so that we can avoid making stupid decisions, or so that we can avoid electing politicians who make stupid decisions, so that we know the context that our politicians need to operate in. So for those two reasons, selfish and civic duty, I think the most important thing is to understand as much as possible about AI. Oh, definitely 4. I mean, it's an invaluable tool, and we've all used AI for many years. Google search is been powered by AI since the early 2010s, and Google search plus Wikipedia is pretty close to omniscience. It's amazing. Well, the process, if you mean by the tools, they're part of the solution. Humans plus the tools are part of the solution. When you talk about willing participant, I think this is a really important point, because I do think sooner or later, all those people out there who are not paying attention to AI, they know that it's important at a conceptual level and they can see how powerful it is, but they're not really thinking hard about the consequences and the implications of that. And they will at some point. And it'll probably happen quite quickly. It'll probably be a phase change. And when they do, it's quite possible that they'll be very, very angry, because they'll be saying, hang on a minute, you people in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, you've been conducting this experiment. You've been developing this technology which might wipe us all out, and you never asked our permission for that. How dare you? And that could be a scary moment for a lot of people. So I think Ben is quite unique. He's a profound technical expert in the field, and he's also clearly a hippie, and he's also got a great sense of humor, and he talks in very down-to-earth language, which is an amazing combination. I mean, he's a delightful person. I don't agree with him about everything, but I do agree with him about most of what he says. He's a terrific communicator because of that unusual combination of aspects. And that's what we need. We need people who can wake up the rest of humanity, the 99.9% who are not really paying attention, without scaring the bejesus out of them. That's a difficult task, and I think Ben is well placed to do that. There's a need for a lot of different types of communicators. It's a very complicated subject, AI. In some ways, it's really simple. We're building something that's smarter than ourselves. That's fairly straightforward. But when you dig into it, the history, where it is now, how good it is now, where it's going, it's very complicated, and there's lots of different points of view. So you can't have just one spokesperson. You can't just have one Carl Sagan who lays out the way it is for everybody, and everybody just gets their information from that one person. So yeah, there's a need for a constellation of communicators, and I do think Ben is one of the best.